If you're not wearing a mask in the city of Charleston, you will no longer get a warning, but a fine. I talk one-on-one with City of Charleston Council member Harry Griffin for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Councilman Harry Griffin, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, Quintin, it's good to be here.
Yes, sir. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, right next door here at Charleston City Hall, obviously you all had a Charleston City Council meeting virtually last night, and there were a plethora of issues that you all had to tackle, including the mask mandate. And from my understanding, that didn't go over well with a lot of people. You said this on your Facebook page, quote, "Please, please, please, do not leave your house tomorrow without a mask on if you live in the city of Charleston. It doesn't matter if you're outside or in. If you're within the city of Charleston, you have to have your mask on. You can't have a lapse of memory or accidentally walk out with it. Warnings will no longer be given. Livability has been authorized to no longer warn but write tickets. Instead, the first infraction is $100. The second infraction is $200. And the third and subsequent infractions are $500 each." The Post and Courier said this right after the meeting, and then in the news article it says this, quote, "Councilman Harry Griffin was the lone vote against the beefed up ordinance, calling it, quote, a really sad disjustice to citizens and visitors," unquote. And this is coming from the Post and Courier. Councilman Griffin, let me ask you this. What justice should have been taken last night when it came to the mask ordinance?
So we've had this mask ordinance on the books now for 2 months almost. It's evolved over time in that originally it was more for educational purposes. You know, we were trying to we put the mask ordinance on the books to it had a $50 fine attached to it, very small amount, and basically it was we pretty much all agreed that we would just warn people. And then Livability came back and said nobody's wearing their mask. So the next time around, these new infractions got put in place. And I voted against the fines because I think they're really, really steep. A parking ticket in downtown Charleston is $14. But if you have a lapse of judgment and your mask isn't on for 10 seconds and you're caught without it on, that's $100. To me, when we're in this economic turmoil that we're in, and people are struggling to pay rent, pay their bills, $100 is your monthly water bill. $100 to a lot of people is a day's pay. You're seriously going to take away somebody's pay for the entire day because it slipped their mind and they stepped out of their vehicle without their mask on? So I tried to come up with some common sense explanations as to why I thought the warning should stay in place, because when you write a ticket, it should be because somebody was not only in non-compliance, but because they had no intentions of adhering to the policy either. There's got to be an intent. If you step out of your vehicle and you've lived your entire life, I've been alive for 25 years, you've been alive for a couple more, 26 or 27.
Oh, 25.
I'm just saying you look so young, man.
Oh, really? Thank you.
But we've lived a life every single day where we've gotten up, we've gotten dressed, and we've done the same thing every day, basically. Now our entire behavior has to change in that we have to cover our face every day. We're going to have temporary lapses of remembering that. And to me, a fine with no warning to a person who does the right thing every single day and makes a minor infraction, to me, that is not worth $100 right off the bat. To me, the way that it was presented last night, taking away the warning and jumping straight to the tickets, and the way it was explained by Livability that, hey, if it's a tourist and we warn them, chances are we won't catch him again. That whole narrative made it seem to me like this was a money grab. This was an opportunity for our city to make up for lost revenue during COVID. And if a municipality is going to write tickets to make money, and basically put that burden back on the taxpayer, it's criminal to me. I honestly believe that. It is against everything I stand for as a government official. I will not support that in any way, shape, or form.
And who gets the money from this actual fine?
The City of Charleston.
What department?
It'll go back into our general fund,
Okay.
which will be used to pay our bills. So we're basically throwing another bill on you to pay our bills. And like I said, if somebody has a motive and says, I'm not going to wear it and I'm not going to follow the rule, and an officer comes up to them and says, sir, please put your mask on. And you look at the officer and say, absolutely not. I'm not going to do it. I don't care about your rule. I'm going to do it anyway. That to me is far different than stepping out of your vehicle to walk into an establishment, walking up to it, seeing posted on the door that a mask is required, and going back to your vehicle to get your mask. Those are completely different situations, but yet they would be punished. And that to me is unfair, unjust, and criminal.
And as a matter of fact, South Carolina does not have a stop in the identity statute. And from my research, livability code enforcers are not sworn law enforcement officials. So can they initiate a Terry stop or an investigative detention?
They cannot. What they can do is they can engage you. They can ask for your information. If you refuse, then they're going to immediately call the sworn law enforcement. Law enforcement has the jurisdiction to also write these tickets. So police officers, livability officers, and some members of our traffic and transportation department have all been given the authority to write citations. And I don't know yet how this will go. I did ask our livability department to start writing tickets because the mask ordinance was not being enforced. But it was because they were complaining about the same people over and over again that they kept warning and warning and warning. I said, well, write them a ticket. But that is completely different than saying no more warnings. We're just going to start writing tickets. I mean, that to me is a completely different circumstance. And I'm very, very worried about where this is going to lead.
Now, you talk about those people that the livability department have been giving apparent warnings to. Who exactly were they? Most What are those underlying, issues from the past? And let me ask you this too: how many number of tickets has the city issued thus far? And of those, how many are those employees of downtown businesses versus citizens and tourists?
I'm pretty sure there have been 16 citations written. There have been several warnings. But I'll tell you, to be honest with you, something smells fishy here. I mean, just watch the meeting last night. There was some of the comments made just don't make a lot of sense to me, and I'm still scratching my head. I'm really concerned about this, Quintin. Honestly, I was so embarrassed last night to hear other city councilmen point their finger at the screen of our Zoom call and say that people need to be made examples of. Now I can understand, that there's a few people that are probably taking advantage of this ordinance and they will be handed a ticket. But our Charlestonians, our residents are good people. They're hardworking people, and everybody's struggling right now. So I don't want to hear other people in leadership act like they're better than our residents. I mean, those times should not happen. Those occurrences should not happen. And if we get into a system where our elected officials think they're better than the people that they represent, our form of government is going to dissipate, and we're going to be left with a system that is going to be completely unfair, completely unjust. And honestly, if your representative thinks they're better than you, then him or her is not truly a representative of you.
Those three ordinances that apparently have been obviously, changed throughout this particular summer, which one is ideal and which one should have been, revisited last night?
I would go back to the original one, the $50 fine. You could put maybe a steeper fine for repeat offenders, but the original ordinance said that you only had to wear a mask in public if you could not maintain a distance of 6 feet. Now the ordinance says that you are required to wear a mask when walking in public. That's it. It doesn't have anything after that. So I've been attacked a lot on social media. I put it out there about this thing. You read my post. Right. People saying that I'm wrong and I'm lying, that, you don't have to wear a mask if you're walking in public if you maintain social distance. They're reading an old ordinance. And that's the problem with amending something 4 times in 2 months. We have so many versions of this thing out in circulation now that everybody is following a different version. The only one that is on the books as of right now is the one from last night. And so another thing that got brought up last night.
Okay.
I said, look, everybody was talking about, oh yeah, let's go after the tourists. Let's go after the tourists. If we write them a warning, by the time we see them, and not wearing their mask a second time, they'll be heading out of town and it won't matter. I said, well, let me ask you this. When you go to go on vacation, do you pull up the code of law for that city that you're going to visit and start reading through their ordinances? And everybody was like, oh, yeah, I do. I said, no, you don't. I said, what is the harm in seeing somebody who clearly doesn't understand the law and going up to them and saying, look, we have a mandatory mask ordinance for outside and in. Here is a list of exemptions. Because a lot of municipalities around this country are not doing as strict an ordinance as we are. We are one of the strictest ordinances around this country in terms of face masks. A lot of places, you don't have to wear one when you're outside. Because if you remember, back in the day, when all of this started coming about and we started talking about wearing masks, outside was supposed to be the safe haven for this disease. If you were outside in the open and breathing in the fresh air and not around other people, then that was supposed to be your safe haven. But now, our city feels like if you're walking in public, you should have a mask on. So why would we just go up and write a $100 fine to somebody who has just entered this city and doesn't know that? The only thing I can think of is we're writing them the fine because we want to pocket the money. It doesn't make sense to me why you wouldn't give somebody one clear warning. If somebody decides to be in non-compliance after they're given one free warning, then I say write the ticket. But don't just go up to somebody who's unaware and write them a fine. You know, the response to that from the council, it was basically that not knowing or ignorance is not an excuse. And some of the things I heard last night, man, I mean, at one point, one of the council members said to me that I didn't know as much as them because I was a lot younger than they were. I've got a pretty bitter taste in my mouth about last night. And I really am dissatisfied with a lot of the comments that I heard from my colleagues because they are acting as if there's some sort of elitism in the city and that, we are better than the people that we represent. And that just isn't the case. And we've got to do a better job of relating with our people again, because I know being cooped up in our houses and having to socially distance and do Zoom calls has probably hurt a lot of our interaction with other people and our social skills. But we're not better than the people we represent. We're very blessed to be representing them, and we need to be working on behalf of them, not telling them what they can and cannot do and fining them and going into their pocket where it hurts them the most.
Mr. Councilman, let me ask you this. Is this a public health issue or is this government overreach?
This particular is government overreach. We had, for public health, you talk about public health, we've got the lowest amount of cases that we've had in over a month. The case number is going down every single day. I was just looking at the DHEC numbers. This week and last week, I mean, we're back. We're almost near a curve flattening again. So don't tell me that the warning system is what's causing a public health crisis. And obviously, and I'll be the first to admit, I was a little weary about the masks because telling people that they have to do something is always going to be a problem. But obviously, the amount of people that have stepped up to wear a mask, it has had a positive effect on the numbers. But don't tell me that you could never convince me that the warning system is a public health crisis. If anything, it's just a step that is keeping our city from reaching into our people's pockets.
Has the Tecklenburg administration failed when it comes to communicating with people about the ordinances?
That's a good question. I think that we failed as a city in informing our people about these changes. And let me just give you an example. Okay. I said on our call last night that a lot of people don't know that you have to wear a mask when you're walking in public. And you watch the tape. Council members, no, I think you're wrong. You're not right about that. We've lost touch with our people. Then I put it out there on social media about this, and people go crazy. 500 comments. People had no idea. So either we just don't understand our people anymore, or we are failing to communicate because people do not understand the gravity of these decisions. They don't know about the fines, and they didn't know that while they're outside walking in public, they had to have a mask on. And if our people don't know, you got to put it back on the council and our city and our public relations. We've got to do a better job of informing people. I know we put press releases out, but we've got to do more. People need to know what is going on.
How can the city of Charleston, and particularly the Tecklenburg administration, educate people more in detail about social distancing?
Well, we need to probably have more virtual workshops and try to get as many people from the different areas of Charleston on these. I made a comment last night. The mayor agreed with me. We need to have more signage outside, out in the open. We've got some signage at our city parks. We've got some signage the city put out signage on all the local businesses.
Right.
But when you're walking around, if you could find find some signs that could, like yard signs that could catch your eye, that reminded you, I need to have a mask on, then we would get a lot more people into compliance. That I think is a really easy fix. We just need to do a better job as a city of putting that information out there. Virtual meetings would be nice, even more. Radio ads. There's plenty of things that we could do. And we just need to do a better job of doing it. We made a lot of examples of ways we could fix it last night. Signs, yard signs, up and down streets, public streets. That's a great way to do it.
Is this updated ordinance going to really scare locals and tourists from coming and really patronizing businesses along downtown Charleston?
Absolutely. Quintin, I'll put it to you this way. Charleston is in the worst shape it's ever been economically. Our budget is upside down. Our finances are in whack. We're going to have to take out loans to even cover our expenses. Big loan, $40 million probably. Our businesses are struggling to keep their doors open. Investors who have invested in property have lost significant amounts of money. We are in a state of depression in Charleston in terms of economics. We finally had some foot traffic this past weekend. I went downtown and walked around a little bit with my mask on, and patronized a couple of places and went to a restaurant with my family to give back a little bit to local business. And I was surprised and happy to see people walking around. But if we have this sort of authoritarian military state, it's definitely going to scare people off. There are places people can visit that are far more likely to work with businesses and make your experience a lot better. I got to give Helen Hill credit with CVB. She's doing a lot. She's working very hard to try to get businesses back open again.
Right.
But there has to be a consensus between the government and the private business sector. And when the private business sector is asking for help, and there's plenty of other ways to help other than monetarily, the city should jump. And the reason I say that is without the business sector, our city would fail miserably. Without tourism, our city would fail miserably. Tourism and maritime are our two biggest industries in this region. They touch so many jobs, so many people are involved in those two sectors. We've got to prop them up. My philosophy on COVID when it comes to shutting businesses down has been very simple. If you're going to take something away from a business, every time you take something away, try to give them something back. And so, for example, if you want to put a restriction on music until not that you can't have audio louder than an acoustic guitar or elevator music on your stereo system. If you don't want that louder music past 9 p.m., then you need to give back something to help these businesses out. Don't just take and not give anything back. And so now that the numbers are going down and they've dropped significantly, because we're now another thing away, we're taking away the right to get a warning. We should look at giving back those 2 hours that we have taken on the music, because we're going to limit. It's going to be a hazard. It's going to be something that alarms people to not necessarily go to downtown Charleston because they could get these fines. But maybe you can incentivize them coming if they know that they could hear, a band play some music that they like. So we've got to do a better job of giving back because constantly we're taking away.
Has the city given anything back to the business community yet? Since the riots, since the COVID-19 situation?
Since the riots, absolutely not. I mean, we've gotten a few answers, not many, but with everything else going on, there hasn't been many answers. We got some audio tapes of that night, which to me shows just a lack of preparation. and some very alarming audio of what the direction was that night, who was in charge, and where the leadership was. In terms of COVID, our businesses it's been a roller coaster. One thing I'll say about Governor McMaster, and I know I haven't liked every single decision he's made, but number one, I respect him and I respect his position as governor. And I will never publicly bash him for the job that he does, because I think it's very difficult what he's doing right now, and I'm very appreciative of his efforts. But the whole 11 p.m. music thing, I think was a little bit, I wouldn't say there was too much science behind that. I think it was more of an emotional thing, and young people like to stay out later, and so if you put a curfew of 11, it's pretty much a curfew. Where at 11 o'clock you can't drink out in public or patronize a bar, so you end up going home. So I think because young people had the biggest amount of cases, that putting the 11 p.m. was a way to kind of keep them from staying out real late. But now that our numbers have, started dropping significantly again, I think we should be at least taking small steps to, like, for example, the music, to see whether or not it has an impact on the numbers. So let's just say we move the music time back to 11 to basically get back in line with the governor's order, and the number of cases continue to drop. Well, then we would realize that we didn't need to limit the music to 9 p.m. You see what I'm saying? And I feel like we haven't done a good enough job getting to the bottom of what works and what doesn't. It's either open it up or shut it down. But then in between those two, we're not tinkering with these ideas and figuring out what really impacts the virus the most, and whether or not we can give some things back to help these struggling businesses. We're not doing that, and we need to do a better job of it.
And I would love to ask you some more follow-up questions, but the lawnmower guy is coming back soon. I told him 15 minutes.
We'll just have to make this part 1 or 2, and we'll follow this up in the near future.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this too, Councilman. Should the disposal of masks on the ground be an ordinance or be more of an issue than actually wearing them?
You should be fined. I mean, but we already have a strong littering ordinance on the books, and we need to. While these offices are out writing people tickets for not wearing a mask, maybe they ought to write a ticket for somebody who leaves their mask on the ground. I can't tell you the last time I went to a place of business and didn't see a mask on the ground in the parking lot somewhere. People are so ready to have a bunch of masks on them because they understand they've got to be in compliance. But, I mean, you can't have people just littering their masks on the ground. It's not good for the environment, and it really builds up, and it's that whole broken windows theory where if something's not right, you fix it, and if you don't, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and people are going to think you don't care. So we need to address that immediately. I'm very glad you brought that up.
Has the residents of the city of Charleston lost trust in Mayor Tecklenburg and Charleston City Council?
All I can do is tell you what I've seen, what I've heard. I would say absolutely. This is the toughest time I've ever had on council, where I try to vote with my conscience, and I really don't care about getting reelected. I don't care about what happens at the end of the next year. My job is not to focus on that, not to worry about whether or not my decision is going to get me reelected or not. It's to vote with my conscience, vote in the present time, and do what's best for the people I represent. And everybody, I would hope, is trying to do that, but we've made some bad decisions, and we're really, really paying for it. It's, an accumulation of things that have kind of snowballed, and it's going to take a lot to get our residents to trust us again. And that is my mission every day, is to earn their trust back, even if I don't feel like I've lost that much support, or whether I have lost it. I'm not really sure. I'm not really too focused on what happens at the end of next year. but I'm very focused on getting our citizens' trust back again. And we can earn it back every single day by listening to them, opening up our ears, shutting our mouths, and listening, hearing their concerns and complaints, taking all of that into consideration, and trying to do some common sense approaches to get the city open back up again.
Let me ask you 2 yes and no questions quickly, as I know you got to get back to sweeping these leaves up. But you talk obviously about those tapes. Who was actually in charge that night when the riots took place? Was it Tecklenburg or was it, obviously Reynolds?
The mayor is always in charge. He is the mayor. He is the CEO. The buck stops with him. And so whether or not he took a hands-off approach and the chief ran the show, I don't know. But I can tell you this. The mayor of Charleston, the mayor of any major city, should be involved, should have his boots on the ground, and should be right there in the thick of it. If you care about this city and you don't want to see it burned and rioted and looted and torn apart, you better be visible and you better be involved.
And let me ask you this too, Mr. Councilman. I keep asking all of the city council members, as much as I love all of them, and I don't want them to take it personal. But let me ask you this. How many private donations have been totaled so far with this Calhoun statue?
All we were told is that one person donated $100,000. I don't know about all of the change.com petitions or all of that other stuff. We were told in our meeting about it when we approved the money. You can listen to it on tape. You can read it in the minutes. The mayor specifically said one man donated $100,000, but wanted to remain anonymous.
Right, right.
And that's the explanation we got.
Well, then what will be the tab for the actual taxpayer?
At that point, for that phase, $38,000. I don't know whether or not the city's planning on receiving these other donations from change.com or all this other stuff. I just don't know. I can't answer that right now.
And how much money is this costing the city for the statue to still stand up there at Marion Square without John C. Calhoun, obviously?
Right now, the cost is that it's completely deteriorated our relationship with the Washington Light Infantry and the Sumter Guards. They have sent us a letter. They want the rest of that statue removed from the property immediately. Now, the city has had discussions with contractors about how to do that. But I'm telling you, unless we see, there's really a couple of ways that it could be handled. If you see a very small amount of money being spent to remove it, then you know that whoever's going to do it is going to be destroying it, basically, because it's very expensive to remove a base and a pillar like that and do it in a way that it could be put back together. I don't want to talk financial figures. I've gotten some numbers from contractors, and I can just tell you, if it's done properly, it would be far more expensive than just removing the statue.
And let me go back to that mask ordinance. Are the police officers in the ordinance? Because I don't think that's the case in the town of Mount Pleasant. Is it here in the city of Charleston?
What, being exempt, as in if you're an officer, you're exempt, or you can write a ticket?
Write a ticket. That's what I meant to say.
Yes, officers can write tickets.
Okay.
Officers, police officers, sworn, livability officers that are not sworn, and traffic and transportation code officials who are not sworn. They all are able to write citations.
Why?
I guess because the city figured that we didn't have enough livability officers to enforce it. I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't have an answer.
Do they have enough livability officers to enforce this ordinance?
We definitely don't have enough livability officers to spend their time doing this, plus do their normal job. So that could be a reason why. But honestly, like I said, this whole thing has snowballed into something that I don't think any of us thought it would get to this point. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
And I would love to talk to Mayor Tecklenburg. I know he's right there next door. So I would love to sit down and talk to him and ask some tough questions about
I don't think he could handle your questions, Quintin. You're a good journalist. And
thank you.
And politicians have a tough time answering hard questions on any level. So I enjoy it because I've got nothing to hide. Never will, never have, never will. And like I said, I'm living in the moment. I've got a job to do today. I got to do that to the best of my ability every single day. I can't worry about next year or what the future holds. I just got to worry about getting these businesses back in Charleston. We've got to build these businesses up. We've got to keep these corona cases as low as possible. And we've got to find a way to get back to good again. At one time, this was a great place. We've fallen on some hard times, but I'm not one to run. I'm going to roll my sleeves up and get to work and fight for our residents, because that's what we need to do right now. It's my
job. And I know obviously everybody talks about donut holes, and I'm sure there are in the city of Charleston. How will the city of Charleston deal with that as far as this new mask ordinance?
Your guess is as good as mine. Donut holes are not covered by our mask ordinance. This only applies to the city of Charleston. You could be living next to somebody who doesn't have to follow it. Obviously we're not going to be coming on private residences anyway, but if a business is in a donut hole, they have to comply with the Charleston County ordinance, not the city.
Councilman Harry Griffin, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin. I hope I can set the record. I want to be that guy that's been on more episodes than anybody else.
You gotta beat Seekins, right? You
gotta chase down Mike Seekins. He's been around a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. And that's why I asked him those tough questions that day. I know he got mad, but it was okay. I got to ask those tough questions.
Hey, I'm sure he respects the fact that you always ask tough questions and you're very transparent.
Yeah.
I'm coming on this program. You got a friend in me for the rest of your life. I'll always come on your program.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I hope to have Mr. Seekins back on as well. I'll see him around downtown.
All right, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.